So, good morning. My name is Anjali Singh, and I'm from Nexin Conferences. I would like to welcome all the distinguished panelists delegate to 5G India Congress 2021. Uh, I would also like to welcome Sri Randeep Sakhon, Chief Technical Officer, Bharti Airtel, Mr. Anand Bhaskar, MD Service Provider, Cisco India, Mr. Jagbir Singh, CTO, Vodafone Idea, Dr. S.P. Kochar, Director General COI, Mr. Brajesh Chawla, MD from Accenture, and Neil Saaf, Vice President Research from Counterpoint Research. On behalf of NextGen Conferences, I would also like to thank our presenting partner, Sapphire partner Cisco, Gold partner CoreEdge. Uh, before, without their support, this event could have not been possible. So that's it from the organizer side. From my side, I would like to hand over this session to Neil Saaf for the proceeding. Neil, over to you.
Thanks, Anjani, and thanks for everyone on the panel to make your time out of a busy schedule. As everyone is busy with this pandemic, accelerating the need for mobile, and everyone is gearing up to provide best services to the users. So, thank you very much, everyone. I hope we'll have a very good, insightful session with all these esteemed panelists driving the telecom industry in India. So, the from the discussion point of view today, what we would like to discuss the framework today for the discussion is so we are at the cusp of entering a 5G era, entering this new decade, entering the 5G era. But so far, in last 4 to 5 years, India has also grown in the world map in terms of the 4G capabilities and has one of the lowest, I would say, price point per GB, which has accelerated the adoption of 4G at mass market level, right? So we have hundreds of millions of 4G users, and now we have a very good strong base to go to 5G and go beyond users to enterprises and different verticals. So starting with that, so I just wanted to throw out a question to all of you actually. So looking back at the 4G era, and now we are going into the 5G era. What do you see? What are the learnings and what are the challenges we see when we enter this 5G era, and what we need to take care of to have a smoother deployment of 5G and make 5G a success? So maybe I can start with Mr. Randeep, if you can go on.
Okay, good day to all. Well, I think you rightly said India is one of the markets where 4G is such a prevalent technology. We have many millions, hundreds of millions of users connected on 4G and using 4G as their main internet connection. And during these pandemic times, the remote working, the education for a lot of kids and offices are being run on 4G network because we all know broadband has still not penetrated to different parts of India. That said, if we see the India's spectrum holdings and the average speeds India gets on 4G, if we use open source crowdsourcing benchmark networks, we realize India is one of the lowest 4G speeds also, while we have the highest 4G users, which means for users to get better speed, we need something more. And 5G is coming at the right time because it is providing you a larger tranche of spectrum and also a newer technology which gives you higher speed, lower latency, and all the uses we are doing today will work even better on 5G. Coming on challenges for 5G, I think if we learn from our 4G time, it is not a technology which is only limited to cities. 4G is like available in all the remote parts of India. I think 5G.
I'm having problems. I may have to drop out because I can't hear a lot.
Okay, so
we can hear very well. Randeep, carry on.
Okay, so basically 5G, one part is that we should not see 5G as a technology only for cities. It will be a technology for anywhere in India if somebody needs a high-speed connectivity. So in that sense, 5G should be seen as a mainstay. But the challenges in 5G remain is that, first of all, we need to make sure that this technology comes at an affordable price in terms of for the operators to network, in terms of spectrum cost, capex cost, transport readiness, infra readiness, and the power consumption linked to it. and from the users to be able to easily migrate to 5G, the devices have to come at affordable prices. Good news is devices are already there, close to 20,000 Indian rupees, and we hope that the devices will be moving at a very affordable prices to 12 to 15,000 by the time India starts to launch 5G in a large way. I would believe all the operators are more or less ready. As and when spectrum auctions finish, the rollout will start. So that's what I say. I think India is ready for 5G, and as and when auctions happen, operators will be launching 5G and making that high-speed availability, not just for cities, but almost all part of India where the data speeds are required. And then India will have a higher speed wireless connectivity.
Great to hear that. Mr. Jagbir Singh, do you have any comments on the same?
I think since we are the operator and we understand each other, I will say the same thing what Randeep is saying. I think I'll take the Randeep last point. First thing is we should also learn, like what is happening in 4G and what is happening around the world in terms of the spectrum pricing. You can take example of Japan, you can take China. China is given free. So I think it's very important that we get the spectrum at the right price, right cost. And as Randeep was saying, I think 4G is doing well. So there's no, issue in terms of in general, all the as of now the use cases which are there can be met on the 4G. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't have the demand for 5G. For sure, the new use cases are coming. So we need to ensure that we have the better speeds, better latencies, and maybe the more and more network slicing kind of use cases where I can give the customized end-to-end services for a given vertical of the segment. For those things, I think we need to have 5G and we need to develop those use cases. And I think already there are some use cases which we are going to show in the trial. But at the same time, in terms of the deployment, we have gone through the upgrade of in a big way for the transport for 4G to support, and 5G will still require the big upgrades, whether it's IP MPLS or it's going to be optical transport or the converging both IP and optical. And at the same time, maybe to begin with, going from maybe NSA architecture to the SA architecture. So I think it's going to be combination of 4G and 5G until the 5G becomes fully matured in terms of the ecosystem and the right price points. So I think we are all looking forward, as long as we get the good support, from the government in terms of the spectrum auctioning and the pricing, etc.
Great. So if I go to Ms. Chawla, what are your thoughts and what is the role you are playing? What is the role you are playing for enabling this, and what challenges do you see for 5G?
So, thanks, Neil. So, first of all, I'll echo what Randeep and Jagbir mentioned. See, if you look at what has happened globally, right? So, even if you look at countries that took a lead, South Korea and US, the first wave of 5G is basically an enhancement over LTE, right? So, it's just helping people do better what they were already doing. They were already doing gaming, it became immersive gaming, right? They were already watching HD content, now they are watching 4K content. But there's no innovation that has happened in that first wave, right? Which is basically launching of 5G on low band spectrum, sub gigahertz spectrum. For the real magic of 5G to come into effect, right? It has to move to the millimeter wave band, which is where, as Jagbir was mentioning, the network slicing, right? Different quality of services, different use cases for different industries, etc., will come into play. And I think that is where the uptake will eventually pick up. So industry, government will have to take a lead in this. If I take the example of China, right? In China, because government encouraged this across all telcos, they also became one of the first consumers of this technology. So, I'm told they have now smart ports which handle ship navigation without any human interventions. They are launching their smart airports. which do not require any human intervention for check-ins, baggage handling, so on and so forth. And Wuhan is these days known for certain other events, but it may go down in the history as the first city that would have issued the first commercial license for an autonomous vehicle. Right? So these kind of use cases have to come in. We cannot expect just enhancing the LT experience to then engender innovation or engender people's interest. As we have seen, even Verizon's experience, by launching small cells in residential areas, did not lead to too much uptake by consumer segment, except for some excitement around gaming. So I fully echo these points. Now, as people who are sort of call themselves ecosystem orchestrators, what we are also seeing is these use cases in the industrial segment, government segment, etc., can be brought to life only with complex solutions being deployed, right? So be it private cellular networks, be it MEC use cases, it requires a telco to be in place, data center host or hyperscaler to be there, a solution owner to be there, and somebody to manage operations.
Right.
We see our role primarily in being the orchestrator of this, right? And this requires business cases to be set up over a 3 to 5 year period, right? Nothing is commercially viable in the immediate term. How to make it viable over a 3-year term, 5-year term, and then get various constituents or solution partners in. I think that's the key role players like us have to play, and governments have to play in making these use cases real.
Correct. Fair points, Brijesh Chawla. Mr. Bhaskar, from Cisco's perspective, what do you see are the challenges? Because you play from infrastructure side of things, working with operators, enterprises, and since 5G is going to bring a huge wave of integration between enterprises and operators, right? So where do you see Cisco playing a big role? There are some examples with Rakuten partnership where I can see Cisco is playing a big role. Can you talk about it a bit and how it is helping solve challenges from OPEX and CAPEX perspective?
So I think you hit the nail on the head in the last sentence when you talked about OPEX and CAPEX. Every service provider, we have Randeep and Jagbir here on the line as well, and the constant feedback that we get from them is get us the lowest cost to serve and the best customer experience that they can give to their clients. And it's our job as their partners to sort of enable that. I think, if I were to just step back a bit, talking about 4G, I mean, from a Cisco standpoint, the way we see it is that 4G was all about speeds and feeds, and that sort of led to the entire app economy and the sort of entire, whatever the size of the entire mobility industry and the app industry, app economy. I mean, 5G is expected to provide that experience around that, right? So be it virtual reality, be it all the complex use cases around remote machinery usage and all of those. I'm not still getting into the autonomous vehicles and all of that yet, but from an India perspective, I think there are enough and more use cases where we can sort of look at it. But the key while our job is to support the telecom service providers, for the operators, the key will be how do they make their money around it, how do they get the increased ARPU around it for the investments that they make on that. So from a Cisco perspective, we participate in this ecosystem across all the layers. First and foremost, working with the CTOs, working with the telecom service providers to build the state-of-the-art network, and Cisco is investing a lot of money around primarily getting that what we call as the Internet of the future, right? Jagbir sir talked about it, around building the next layer or next wave of transport networks, merging the routing and the optical networks together to provide a lesser cost of ownership. That's one key area that we are working with. The second is around the entire application area, right? So that is where we partner with the large system integrators and the large orchestrators, as Brijesh talked about, the likes of Accenture, the IBM, the Infosys, so on and so forth, in terms of helping build the use cases sort of to work with in the new economy. The last part, which is a very important part, is around the monetization piece, right? And that's where Cisco, by virtue of having a very strong presence in the enterprise side of the business as well, right? That's where we are working with all the operators to build monetizable use cases, and that is where Cisco differentiates itself, right? In terms of we have a 360 relationship with the service providers, helping build the networks, working with partners to digitize the customers' operations, and last but not the least, have a very strong go-to-market relationship so that we can look to monetize and help the operators make more money.
Great, great, good points. I think providing the lowest possible data plan for 5G is going to be key for operators. And to talk about that more, I would like to also ask Dr. Kochar, what are his views? How can we achieve that, and what are the challenges he also sees from macro perspective?
Thank you, Neil. That's very kind of you. And let me start by saying that I agree with whatever has been said so far. The aim is to reduce the cost of rollout, so that the revenues flow in and it becomes a good ROI for the operators who will invest into this network. Now, to do that, we are in constant touch with the government, and we are impressing upon them not to look at 5G as they have looked at 4G or 3G. In 4G and 3G, they were looking at primary revenues generation from telcos in the form of whatever they collect during auctions of spectrum and other fees and levies. In 5G, that is not the case. That is what we are trying to tell them. We are saying that this is an enabling technology which will enable all other sectors. And if enabled properly, then the revenue flows from other sectors, which I call as secondary revenue, will far surpass the primary revenue which they can collect from the telcos alone. And therefore, they have to look at the different formulas, different way of looking at the primary revenue, so that facilitation of rollout of networks takes place, especially in this interim period, when the monetization of whatever little use cases are there is not fully mature. Thereafter, they can visit it again, depending on how the things go. But at this point of time, it is the government has to get into a partnership mode with the telcos to see that the rollouts take place and they take place effectively and cost effectively for the operators and the private sector which is participating.
Very, very good point, and I think that is what will drive, I believe, the uptake of 5G from cost perspective as well as from enterprises perspective, seeing it as an enabling technology for them to accelerate their digital transformation, right? And that is where we're just talking about enterprise, but for government, it's the bigger picture is smart cities as well, right?
Yes.
And that is where 5G can do a lot, as we are seeing in China, the use cases which Brijesh also highlighted, right? So there is a threefold, I think, benefit right from user, consumer, enterprise, and public sector. So completely agree. So if we talk about the 5G deployment, right? Since we have Randeep and Jagbir over here, and we have Anand also. So from architecture point of view, where do you see, since we are slightly behind maybe the Korea of China, US of the world, do you see we can leapfrog from 4G directly to 5G SA, or do we have to go through the NSA as well?
Well, I can take a stab at it. I think first of all, it's a misnomer to call it that NSA and NSA is a stepping technology to SA. In my view, it should not be seen like this. And if you even see the performance of networks, I will advise you, Neil, as well, and all people who are listening in, to go to a open source and look at the benchmarking of different operators in US, which has SA and NSA both, and see what is the difference in throughputs and what is the difference in latencies. Actually, there is no difference.
Okay.
So really speaking, NSA is a beautiful evolution of using two technologies simultaneously and getting the benefit of both.
Okay.
Because 4G is in coverage frequencies, which is lower band, mid band, and 5G, at least in India, will start in sub-6 and 78, where definitely because of the higher frequency, the coverage would be limited. To building them together will ensure that at least on the downlink side, the coverage in an NSA mode is much more, you can say longer or deeper if it was only SA 3.5. So really speaking, those countries who have done SA, they have sub-gigahertz or a low band, like China has done SA, because their 4G is 2600, their 5G is also 2600. So the coverage is mapping the same footprint. And
Hmm.
similarly, US operator has done SA because they have sub-gigahertz in SA. So we should not see NSA and SA as SA is 5G and NSA is not. I think this
No,
is
no, no.
somewhere I don't know who, but this image is being formed that it is different. It is actually the beauty of working of two technologies together in a manner where you can use the ubiquity and then able to get good coverage and experience to the customers. In my view, the operators who are in good 5G coverage, uplink and downlink,
Hmm.
will remain on 5G, and as they move out, they'll move to NSA, and they move out, they'll go to 4G. So this is how it will work really, and it is really a software. So really speaking, it is no difference as far as SA and NSA as a radio is concerned. What is difference is core, which is the new core. The new core is needed for the AMF to come in instead of MME for the hosting of a 5G, 5G UE in that case. So in my view, that will also evolve. All the cores which we are putting now are cloud native and they are software evolutable to a 5G core, which means at least the newer ones, which we are newer generations we are putting. And so it will be more like a seamless rollover. And when you need to cut over, it will cut over. And so I feel India should start with NSA so that it gets that benefit. And then it should, SA will happen once we reform our 4G frequencies to 5G. Like what we have done now, we have shut down our 3G networks and we are moving it to 4G, and kind of the frequency is now used for 4G. Similarly, at one stage, when 5G becomes mainstay, maybe a couple of more years down the line, then all the frequencies we are using today for 4G will become 5G frequencies.
So you see technology like DSS being important then?
DSS is anyhow important. DSS is important today also. I mean, if you see today, we use 2G and 4G as DSS, which is dynamically sharing the resources of spectrum for running two technologies. And in this case also, while 3.5 will be pure 5G, but the lower bands using DSS can extend an NR and 4G radio together and ubiquitously use the network. And this will be very important when the cutover happens, when the traffic starts moving from 4G to 5G.
5G.
At that stage, DSS will very elegantly start moving resources. So in my view, all operators are ready with these technologies and they will be used to serve the Indian customer best.
Awesome.
I think that's how we should see it.
Very good explanation. Thanks. That clears a lot of doubt among industry on NSA versus SA and everything. Jagbir, do you have any comments on the same?
So I agree what Randeep says. Okay, so I can only take it back a little bit before I add anything on SA and SA. See, basically what you need is you need to have flexibility and you need to ensure the costs are lower. Cost is optimized. Now, what the benefit you got in 4G versus what you are going to get further benefit in 5G is basically cloudification, and which is we are saying virtualization, or we are saying like when you talk about the RAN, you say the RAN is disaggregation, which is open RAN and everything being talked about, but the basic essence is basically providing the flexibility at lower cost.
Correct.
So you can have the open RAN, you can have the same thing, the core network. We say, rather than saying the disaggregation, we say the decomposition of the functionality, which we can say control plane and user plane. If we can disaggregate them or decompose them, we make the core network flexible and we actually can go from the mobile edge computing to the centralized architecture. And that will give you the flexibility of virtualization and cloudification. So you can have the cloud right from the mobile edge to the center. So actually, the basic, these two things are bringing the flexibility in the core network and RAN network and reducing the cost. And as a result of this, also giving the lower latency because you are moving towards the cloud and moving towards the edge. Okay, so that is a basic architecture, benefit you got in 4G. And going forward, the 5G is totally no choice of centralized, but mostly is going to be decentralized. So I think these are the two. And in addition to this, the 5G also bring more of automation of the RAN and core. And making the transport, as I said earlier, IP and optical integrated and more intelligent. So the core becomes basically very, very intelligent and flexible in terms of slicing and dicing. So that's the reason this concept of network slicing is going to provide the opportunity for the use case for the vertical industries or the enterprise market which is being talked for the 5G is coming from there. I think what we need to offer as operator that we have the flexibility available in the core network and the RAN network, whatever we deploy is also actually having the flexibility as much as possible so we can provide end-to-end network slicing and differentiation of quality of service or the services or the application as per the segment. Somebody needs IoT, okay, different resources. Somebody needs, some automation, different resources. Somebody needs only data, mobile broadband, different resources. So network slicing becomes very important. Now, to support all these features in NSA versus SA, I think in general, as I said, I agree. For us, at least for the India market, every operator, every market is different in terms of the stage of maturity and in terms of the infrastructure and the policies available in the country. So I think for us, leverage the 4G layer, especially in the absence of not having killer apps so called for the around the low latency. What you need is initially the high speed or enhanced mobile broadband, which can be given by NSA and can leverage the flexible infrastructure of the core network, which Randeep said, and in general, we all operators are deploying the core, which can be upgraded to 5G. And we have already done trials actually using DSS, 4G and 5G. So the core network can be upgraded. So we have to ensure the cost is reduced, network is ready to be upgraded. Coming to the radio part, as and when the spectrum comes, I think we'll be in position to deploy. But as I said, it should be like at the right cost. And we have to, of course, take the benefit of the 4G layer. So basically go from NSA to SA. And wherever there's and SA is also growing very fast, actually, in terms of the ecosystem. So I will not say maybe if the 5G deployment is delayed by two years, let's say, because of spectrum, because of policy, or because of anything else. Maybe we might jump on SA directly, or maybe the mix of NSA and SA.
Exactly.
Geography, like Delhi might have maybe SA, maybe the rural area might have the NSA. So depending on the the stage when we deploy, depending on where we deploy, depending on what use case we want to support, I think we can decide about the architecture. But I see no issue both SA and NSA.
Awesome. That is a very good point. If that is possible, I think for enterprise use cases, like we have a question here, for industrial 4.0 use cases, I think maybe for those sectors can have a 5G core with SA implementation, which will drive a lot of slicing based use cases, which are possible with 5G SA more efficiently, right? So completely agree. Dr. Kochhar, do you have any comments on this deployment models, or how do you see?
Sure. In the market demands NSA, which will shorten the time for deployment of 5G. And in territories where there is less of data requirements and less of app requirements, as we said, we will require NSA. But in concentrated markets, we will require SA. So for a very long time to come, I think the flavor will be a mix of both NSA and SA going together, serving different territories in the manner that the market dictates, rather than having a clear-cut roadmap that no, we're going to deploy NSA for first few years and then go on to NSA. That is not going to work in a territory like India.
Correct.
You cannot cover the entire territory with the cloud of 5G right at one go. So it has to be a combination. NSA also will not go to all territories where it is scantily populated and where there is no requirement really speaking.
Sure.
So there maybe NSA also will take time to reach.
Right.
But important point to note here is whether it is NSA or SA, both are taking the advantage of flexibility and adaptability of 5G. And therefore the networks that are being built, be it the core network or the edge network or the radio, have to adapt to both flavors. And that is what both CTOs have said, that is what they are doing, and they are cognizant of this fact that they have to do it. As an industry, what we require is facilitation of building up the infrastructure, and by that I mean the fiberization and the towerization. Because without that, whether it is NSA or SA, it doesn't matter. It is not going to serve the purpose. So that is where we are, as an association, in touch with the government, saying that please facilitate a single window approach and a single rule approach for fiberization, for towerization, and facilitate us. We come with us hand in hand and see that these hurdles are removed. The government is responding. Centralized portal is being built. Instructions have been issued to have centralized recommended rates as recommended by the central government. But there are challenges which we are trying to overcome. And once that happens, the fiberization should work at a faster pace, simultaneously to facilitate RCTOs to go into areas which are inaccessible to fiber. We are fighting with the government to give us ENV band so that we have fiber in the air and we can take 5G into areas which otherwise may not be possible. So it's a combination of all these things put together that will make 5G a reality in India.
Great. So flexibility and fiberization are the two key things, which is
and adaptability.
Great. So going to Anand, what do you see from Cisco point of view? How do you align to these hybrid strategies for operators from your portfolio perspective?
Hey, thanks. I think, I agree with what Randeep and Jagbir mentioned and also what Kochhar sir mentioned. See, clearly from a technology perspective, the technology is ready. Both SA and NSA, we are sort of doing trials with all of our customers and all of our partners. SA, we have a big reference site globally as well at T-Mobile. And so we are, from a readiness perspective, we are there. I'm sure it is and we are working with them to sort of make that cloud ready, get that NSA in place. And as and when the converged 5G core, as Randeep mentioned, is ready, we will we will partner with them to sort of get that done. And clearly, in a country as large and complex as India, it's not going to be one size fits all. As the way we have 2G, 3G, and 4G. Similarly, Randeep mentioned that, right? SA, NSA, and 4G will coexist. So that will coexist depending on the use cases that come in. From a monetization perspective, we will also be part of that strategy from a go-to-market, partnering with these service providers. So technology is ready. It is the monetization strategy and the go-to-market strategy which will determine what the service providers decide which to use where, and we will be supporting them in that journey.
Super. And from system integration perspective, Brijesh, what do you see? What are the challenges you see or opportunities you see with this approach?
I think, again, our co-panelists have captured most of these points. Ultimately, it depends upon what sort of usage can be ensured. And Jagbir actually mentioned multiple times that it depends upon what sort of cost viability can be reached. Right? If it is taking too much cost for us to expand this network and have a dedicated core, of course, the SA networks will not make sense, right? It has to work on NSAs. Again, I will just take a step back here, Neil. As I was mentioning earlier, it also depends upon what sort of uptake do we see in the market for newer services. So if you recall, in the last spectrum auctions, the 700 megahertz spectrum actually went unsold, right? Which very clearly established what the market is looking to and what our telcos are looking at, right? Whatever use cases the market is demanding today can be addressed through LTE-A, right? LTE or LTE-A. It doesn't need us to go to 5G. For 5G, we need to have those use cases. We need to have demand in industrial sector. And that is when you can go invest in radio network, cater to those wave use cases, and then, of course, have the core supporting to it. Now, for that cost viability perspective, again, I will mention a couple of data points, and which will actually influence in a big way whether we move quickly to NSA or quickly to SA or remain on NSA, etc. One is government incentives. So we saw that in South Korea, government came up with big tax breaks, saying 70% of your network has to be ready for 5G, including these dedicated use cases where the quality of service is such and such. And the conversion actually is happening at that pace. In China, we saw that laying out these networks and supporting them with a dedicated core is going to be very, very costly. So China Telecom and China Unicom actually came up with a co-build, co-share model, right? Wherein again, as my co-panelists were saying earlier, DSS slicing help in sharing the resources based on users or the processes running on it. In India, of course, active network sharing is not allowed to the full extent. But I'm saying those kind of aspects will have to come in. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for commercial viability to happen. For specific industrial use cases, to your point, as an SI, of course, private cellular networks can bring to life these use cases. But as Randeep had mentioned earlier, ultimately they'll fall back on the same core. And it is very difficult to find those use cases today which require you to go sub 10 millisecond in terms of latency requirements, right? So most of the use cases can be met with 20 to 30 milliseconds latency or the reliability aspects. So till those things happen, I guess you will see this kind of hybrid approach being taken by our telcos.
Correct. Great. So if we shift gears and talk more about everyone mentioned about clarification, virtualization of network essential as we move to 5G. Where do you see the opportunities in terms of putting edge, making edge intelligent, putting data centers at the edge as well as at the core or in between? What are the different use cases we are looking at when operators are trying to do that? Is it just for low latency, or is it just for content? Or can you talk about, are you trialing use cases which require those kind of MECs? Anyone wants to go ahead? Or is it too far?
Okay, let me take this time. So for a change, I think Karandeep, or you want to go ahead.
No, sir, you go ahead. आपसे आगे कैसे जा सकते?
So I think see, the benefit we have got is we have traditionally we are coming from the 2G 3G background, so we used to have the MBSC locations. All those locations are basically data center locations for us because the quality of infrastructure, at least a tier 3 kind of, we can anytime make it. MSC used to be tier 3, and I think the BSC etc. Anyway, we can make it tier 3. So having the data center from the operator point of view, and all these sites, in fact, are having minimum 2, 3, 4, 5 sites or direction of the fiber. They are highly protected, especially the MSC, and the BSC also maybe 2 or 3 paths. Okay. So I think the infrastructure, one is the passive infra, site readiness, second is the fiber connectivity. So that availability of the infrastructure to support mobile edge computing is there. Now, why should I put it, what should I put it, and what use case I should have? So I think you rightly said, like whether it's going to be mobile gaming, it's going to be industrial IoT, industrial automation, it's going to be like maybe industry 4.0 or any content like surveillance, smart cities. Why should I bring the traffic back to the centralized location? So maybe edge computing. So I think these are the use case, but frankly easy to say. They are being talked on the paper. Everybody is doing bits and pieces. But do I get the return of the investment? I think that's a big question mark today. But will I get in future? Answer could be yes. So there's no doubt. So maybe it's a timing issue, maybe it's a maturity issue. And I think we always talk about the China, Japan. Let's talk holistically. China government also fund. China government with the spectrum free. Provide all the facilities to operator to drive it.
Correct.
So we cannot talk only that China is doing this, but we are not doing this. Please copy everything. If you want to be on the same time, same use cases, same progression, then we need to have the same ecosystem, everything. So I think yes, mobile edge computing is very good even for the enterprise and SMB application. Mobile edge computing becomes very handy. So you can give any enterprise like low latency internet connectivity, their own applications. Tomorrow we want to have a private LTE or private 5G. Anything is possible once we have these locations available. We can put it and we can enable it.
Brilliant.
Over to you, Randeep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I would like to echo the same, that the infra readiness for edge is already there.
Okay.
I mean, I will add not just BSC locations, the MPLS locations, which have actually multipath fiber, and they have 100 to 250 kilowatt kind of range of power available, space available. From really speaking, edge is available. I see edge is having two different use cases. One is B2C and one is B2B. And even in 4G networks, we have CDNs, which we can call edge in some way, where the content is being delivered from the edge. So you can at least give a better return time, better efficiency. So in B2C use cases, today 4G cannot support as much as well. Use cases like you can say mobile edge gaming, cloud gaming, where you can actually without a console play on the cloud. And then also immersive entertainment like AR, VR kind of technologies, where you can have an Oculus kind of end device and actually be very immersive in that. For those things, the rendering has to happen more closer to the UE, and that's where the edge would be needed. But I think the bigger question is monetization of that use case. It is very good. It is easily to be able to demonstrate that use case, but how much will the customer be able to pay for it, and how many customers will be able to afford for it, so that you can have a return of investment of a edge. So in my view, again, I echo what Jagbir is saying, that it will happen for sure, but it will happen probably a couple of years down the line. As we are saying, content used to be free, and people used to enjoy free on online videos. With the OTT coming in, subscribed content is really making wave, and people are not hesitating to pay for an annual subscription of a video subscription or an audio song subscription, and have a paid and a better quality content than a free content. I would say this will also roll up into immersive entertainment, where people will pay for immersive engagement, and cloud gaming, where people will say, okay, I don't need to buy a PS4 or Xbox, I will play on the cloud and I can play as many games, and so I think that will happen. That is what will promote B2C use cases. I believe though that B2B use cases will come earlier because of Industry 4.0 applications and Wi-Fi falling short of giving you a more secure and a higher and more reliable and more low latency kind of application, and more importantly, more concurrency kind of application. When so many IoT devices latch on to a Wi-Fi network and you have too many APNs, it starts to do this. 5G technology is the perfect match for such kind of a high IoT densified use case. It could be a port, it could be an airport, it could be a manufacturing plant, it could be a mining, where a lot of IoTs are there. So I would believe these use cases, which are private network use cases, could be done today using 4G itself, and going forward 5G will provide you the lower latency edge and a higher concurrency edge. There you will need to have a edge, because you may like to keep your data on-prem, you may like to have it more secure. Only the internet traffic or the outside your network traffic you may like to move out. In that case, the slicing kind of services will be needed, because you like to scale and scale out. At that time, a cloud-based native on-prem edge, which could have a certain core application, certain private applications, and then the whole data of that factory or the mine or the port or the airport is being managed there itself and processed and returned, and then only the information recorded to go back is there, and you are then in that way ensuring security of access as well as data as well. So I would say this will happen, and India needs that more. I mean, I echo what Jagbir is saying, that really speaking, government needs to support these use cases for if India has to really go fast on Digital India and Atmanirbhar India, because then this will become as an enabler technology. And saying exactly what General Kocher was saying, is that the benefit of 5G will not come through the revenue shares of 5G or the spectrum fees of 5G. It will come what it will do to the Indian industry as a whole, and the efficiency unlocked there, and India becoming a global manufacturing hub or a global technology hub or a global hosting hub or producing in India and supplying to the world will be enabled through these technologies. So I believe this all will come, and we all as industry stakeholders which are on the panel and not there need to hold our hands together and move in that direction. And taking China example, government have to play a very important stakeholder role in enabling that to happen, not just for the telcos but overall ecosystem, and that will probably put India on a much faster track to digital India than where we stand today.
Correct. So, Dr. Kochhar, do you want to add?
Yeah, I want to. You see, and now I'm stepping out from my current designation of DGCOI to what I was doing earlier as the Signal Officer in Chief of the Indian Army, where I was responsible to provide networks, and we did some amount of pilots with lower Gs with Airtel, and which were successful pilots, which can now be done as a use case with 5G very efficiently. And I'll take a few minutes to just explain. Army is a hierarchical organization, and at every hierarchy it expands. Now, each hierarchy is divided into formations, and those formations have 90% of the work which they do is limited to the area of operations of that formation, and only very little 10% or so goes back into the core at higher formation levels. So the spanning tree of 5G with core computing as well as edge computing maps very well with the architecture, physical organization, organogram of the Indian Army.
Correct.
Also, the advantage would be that in certain areas there will be disruptions to the networks, no matter what technology you deploy. And there you can't have, if it is a core-based network, you cannot have no communication at all, and that is one of the reasons why we are not very keen to have mobile communication. One of the reasons of not being very keen to work with mobiles. Now, imagine a scenario where there is a deployment in the northern region, say, where the current scenario is heated up. If you have edge computing on a 5G non-standalone mode, then you have covered the entire area of operations with a edge computing network with low weight devices carried by individuals, because weight is also at a premium there, and with the capability of connecting back to headquarters on the core, and therefore edge computing serves the lower level formation there. But at higher level, then it becomes the core. And at the intermediary level, they themselves have an edge computing network running on the entire thing. So this is a use case which is definitely available even today. And somebody has to go and explain that this is the way it can be done for defense. And I'm sure that they will be very happy to do this. And in the bargain, you will be able to monetize your efforts.
Correct.
And a similar thing if you do with central ministries. It will be of great advantage, because ministries have a habit of not sharing data with others, and they are always worried that if my data goes into the other ministry, then I will lose credibility. So if edge computing works with a particular ministry, and then there is a core which connects back to core computing, then it meets the requirements of the government also. But I do not know about monetization. That is something that has to be worked out.
Great points. Anand, you want to add something? Brijesh?
I think most of it is covered. What I would say from a manufacturer's perspective is, I think, one is clearly around how do we make these boxes and the entire technology far more hardened so that, they can be in really remote places, in really edge, as they call it, beyond the MSCs and other things that Jagbir and Randeep talked about. I mean, pizza boxes, temperature hardened, so on and so forth. That is one piece from a technology perspective. I think the second important point is to manage networks as they become more and more dispersed and diverse. We will need to have a lot more automation and security to sort of manage these, and that is where Cisco is focused on, right? Getting fit for purpose boxes which can be which can be managed in all sorts of environment. Jagbir has implemented that earlier on when he was in Geo across whatever 300,000 cell sites. Then similarly, from an overall automation and security, those would be the two critical areas if we were to sort of make this a reality.
Yeah.
And it will come, and that is where we are sort of focused on supporting our service provider partners.
Brilliant. And Brijesh, you can answer this question, but I just have an additional question for you. So we're talking about the on-prem, Randeep talk about on-prem versus data not being shared. So where do you see from system integration perspective, if you can add your comment to that, of the role of cloud players, hybrid model? Is it going, industry is going hybrid, or it is just on-prem, or you will see both for edge?
Yeah, so actually I was just adding to what was being said earlier, even in the earlier point, but it adds to it already. See, what is happening is all other constraints remaining there. We are seeing proliferation of micro data centers, right, across the globe. So telcos are putting micro data centers on their BTSs, right? So the problem of latency, as Randeep mentioned earlier, if the data is not traveling far, you are actually addressing part of it right there itself, right? It also addresses the concerns that you have about data residency, right? Where is it going, security issues, so on and so forth. So all those angles are indeed coming in. Now, to your other question around, whether hybrid or private, etc., what is the way to go? See, there are certain applications which will always remain private, right? So again, in an industrial application, you cannot bank to put all its application on cloud. Never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right. So for these, of course, the hybrid approach and even multi approach in terms of keeping a redundancy will always be there. And as SIs, we are seeing the industries are actually becoming very, very mature. As every industry starts calling itself DigiCo, right? They are becoming digital themselves. We are seeing they are building these skills inside. They are also building the entire, at least appreciation of how the design should look like inside. And that's when we work with them to see, okay, this is one area where, hyperscalers could come in to give you big public cloud, or come up with offerings where, outpost kind of features like AWS has to put in cloud infrastructure in your prem. But overall, in case they want to go with private cloud, their own, or with partners like Indian telcos, they're taking care of Government of India restrictions, their own data residency rules, etc. Those are also happening. So we are seeing a mix of this. Market will likely remain hybrid. And as I mentioned earlier, the entire ecosystem in terms of consumer entities becoming intelligent, knowing what they are getting into, various partners emerging, local partners that are actually acting as a competitor to hyperscalers. Hyperscalers on their part trying to go domestic, trying to go small, trying to go private as far as supporting the customers are concerned, and telcos actually pushing the envelope in getting into managed services beyond the core connectivity solution.
Correct.
So, great dynamics in the market, and again, we are seeing that as trying to stitch the solutions together.
Correct. No, that's a great point. So that brings me to the question of telco cloud, right? So how do you define a telco cloud? And Randeep, Jagbish, if you guys can help me out and educate the audience as well. So there is a lot of misnomer around that as well. What are the use cases unlocks, and every telco is moving to cloud from network side of things, but from services side of things also everything is quite cloudified. And also, if you can tell us how far Indian operators are in terms of their virtualization journey.
Randeep, you want to go?
I mean, any of us can go, boss. So you go first, maybe. No problem.
So, see, first thing is, I think the cloud for the core network, especially for the core, is already being deployed by all operators for last 3-4 years. So I would say the physical infrastructure is almost gone. The way we used to have the MSCs, even today the IMS which is there, packet core, everything is actually on the cloud based.
Hmm.
So maybe I would say if not 100%, at least the 90% infrastructure is going into the cloud. And the remaining one is also slowly moving into the cloud. Now, mostly this is we call it telco cloud, you may call it
Yeah.
open source, but always there are some, like nuances of the customization of people like Anand Bhaskar. Like Cisco will have some customization even on Red Hat or, so it's open source Red Hat, but flavor of Cisco, flavor of Ericsson, Nokia, or somebody, right? So, but I think not a big deal. You can buy the infrastructure from HP, Dell, and you can actually deploy anybody's cloud. So that way it's already disaggregated and decomposed, both.
Hmm.
So that way, this is cloud-based, virtualized, open source. But is it public? Answer is no. Are we moving in that direction? Maybe for some applications, we can. For some IT infrastructure, for some, like applications, we can go in the public cloud, and we are thinking in that direction.
Hmm.
In addition to that, our enterprise customers, actually, they are going mostly into the public cloud and not one versus other. They want to have 2 or 3 options.
Hmm.
So when they want, actually, it has to go through our network only because connectivity going through us. So basically, we are having again the mix of responsible to provide the analytics for the customer in terms of the data usage, etc., of the clouds, uptime, etc. In addition to what they will get from the cloud provider, because we become the solution provider to the customer. I think both for the telco requirement, mostly it is today the private cloud, but going forward it could be public. And for our B2B customer, it's actually going to be mostly public, and there could be a little bit left out, could be the sort of private. So that's my view on that.
Thank you. Randeep, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, agreed. So, the cloud is nothing new to telco,
Yeah.
and especially on core applications. We have been on cloud for 4 or 5 years, and it's been, I think it was the way to do. Like people talk about ORAN, that ORAN is now becoming, ORAN will be a cloud-based RAN software. But core, IMS, EPC, they have been cloud-based softwares for quite a long time. And they are softwares on cloud versions of Red Hat, VMware, different cloud providers like Cisco, Nokia. So there are different versions of the open source just to give you customization and security and certain more use cases built in. And that's how core journey has been there on the telco side of cloud. What is happening now on the cloud inside telco is that you are moving into a journey, what we may call is as a multi BNF cloud, which means on the same cloud you can host multiple applications. Earlier it has been a vertical based cloud. That means there is a EPC cloud, there is an IMS cloud, but now there could be one hybrid cloud which could host 2 or 3 different VNFs, and that is what is making you can actually have a independent cloud, not necessarily from the VNF provider, and then you can keep just buying software from the VNF provider. That journey Airtel has been also on, and I'm sure other telcos are also on in a different stage of maturity. The next journey which is happening, which is already again on in many telcos, is the journey to orchestration, a Mano journey, where you will actually start saying, now I have cloud, not just in my tier 1, tier 2 data centers, but it is across, and I need to have a resilient service restoration happening when there is a problem. It could be a problem related to connectivity, it could be a sudden surge of demand, and it could be a shifting of traffic like it happened during COVID, where it moved from cities to this thing. So you have to move capacity, you have to move services in a very ubiquitous and a zero-touch way. That is where the Mano journey is happening, where you can orchestrate a lot. Similarly, during build-up of networks, it used to take a lot of time to actually, let's say you have to expand your capacities. It would take a lot of time. In earlier case, you will throw in your hardware, you will build your cloud software, and then you will load your VNF. You will do testing over 2 or 3 days, and then you will probably make it live for commercial traffic. This all is now cutting into actually hours, where the bringing in of a new load, testing it, is becoming more robust because you can test all the use cases in a very orchestrated manner, and this will then help us provide more resilient core services. But more importantly, I think today we did not discuss 5G has another element to it, which is automation. The 5G network is so complex that it cannot be run in a traditional network way. It has to be run really in a zero-touch way, in an orchestrated and automated way, where you cannot depend upon a knock guy to go and see an alarm and some back-end tech 1, tech 2 guy to go and fix that. It has to be zero touch. It has to be closed loop. It has to be fixed. That's why this journey of a simple cloud to a fully automated, orchestrated cloud over multiple locations is very important. And once that becomes mature, you will find the services will become easily scalable, they'll become fluid, and also it will become more robust. You will not have failures there. Coming back into the B2B use cases, B2B, I mean, Jagbir is right, they prefer to use a public cloud because public cloud provides them a scalability. They, instead of building their own on-prem cloud, and I think this is the right way for telcos, for the enterprises to do. But some enterprise businesses like even Airtel, we also have our own cloud which we sell as a cloud. So we sell it as a service that you can host it on-prem or you can host it on our cloud. So, but still, I would say the main ask, people generally go for a public cloud provider.
Correct.
There is another journey which is happening in certain parts of the world where they are bringing network use cases on public cloud. Where they are building a network use case in public cloud, and you are hearing some announcements in certain other parts of the world. It's good to have, but we must also be talking about the data security, the compliances, as a legal operator where we have to make sure that there is a data on-prem, secure, privacy, all those things. So these concerns will have to be answered. But I would say on their own requirement, telcos are as mature to provide cloud-based services, and this will slowly roll out into edge, slowly roll out into RAN.
Right. And Randeep, with your partnership with AWS, right? Can you talk about that? Where is that journey going, and what is it for exactly?
Actually, the journey we have with Google. We have a packet core instance on a Google which is on-prem, and it is not just the Google cloud, but it is on-prem built. We have also the discussions with AWS as well as Google on building network use cases and trying something on it, or doing joint GTM for building industry use cases on it. Okay. Like I said, and again, picking a clue from what Jagbir said, that enterprises are not making a choice A versus B. They are actually keeping their options open.
Correct.
Hence, the service providers, either a telco service provider or application service provider, are also staying open. That means my application will work on Azure, will work on AWS, will work on Google. So I think this open ecosystem makes sure that you're working with all. Like, for example, Cisco has a EPC. While they build it on their own, they are also happy to say that if you have a Google, you want to help me do it on Google or AWS or Azure, we can also bring our load there. Right. But I would say before they come into networks, they will probably be more supporting industrial use cases. Networks are still better run in a controlled environment, on-prem, secure, network operator-owned clouds. That will probably be a better journey. Probably you want to move on mature orchestration first before you go into public cloud.
Correct. And for B2C use cases, do you see, it's a public or private? For Airtel's first-party services, for example.
You see, B2C use cases on cloud would be like cloud gaming, like I said, right? So I think in a cloud gaming, most likely, in my view, it should be public. It will be public. Reason being, suppose I'm a cloud gaming application provider. I want to go to 20 operators in 20 different countries. I cannot go and do bespoke with 20 different cloud applications. Okay. So I would say I have tested in my lab on an Amazon, Azure, or a Google cloud. Hey, Mr. Operator, if you want me to launch my services, then you choose one of these. I have already tuned it in my lab. I'm good to go. So I think those applications which are these kind of cloud gaming or entertainment applications, they will likely come on cloud of a public provider because they would like to make it ubiquitous for the global application rather than bespoke for everyone.
Very good, very good. Anand, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, cloud, the telco cloud part of it is what Randeep and Jagbir have covered, and we sort of work closely with them to sort of enable that journey. As he mentioned, it's going to be a journey starting with the vertical cloud to horizontal cloud, and we get in our VNFs there and sort of work with them as the partner. And clearly, this is journey, and this is going to continue for a while. I think the only big difference in India versus the other operators is the scale of the operators we have, right? The scale of the operators are very big, and that's where the sort of a public cloud may not, as Randeep mentioned, the public cloud may not make economics for them for some of their larger VNFs, be it a IMS or a packet core or whatever. So that's one critical important one. The second important thing is from an enterprise perspective. If you look at it, today all enterprises will be looking at a multi-cloud, right? So multi-cloud is going to be the strategy. They will have a provider from Google, AWS, or any, and then again the SaaS providers like a Salesforce.com or an Office 365 or whatever. And then the availability, and that's not the earlier context where everything used to go to a data center and from there. So Cisco's strategy is primarily around multi-cloud. How do we support multi-cloud? How do we ensure that, cloud on ramp, SASE, or for that matter, the entire application performance management, application performance monitoring. These are key areas which are of concern to clients, and partnering with service providers, these could potentially be huge enterprise value enhancing use cases for enterprise, which is what we are working with service providers and who in turn will partner with enterprises on, right? So clearly cloud in the context of a telco has got two different one is around what we do with the CTO's organization around helping make their cloud telco ready, and the second is primarily from an enterprise use case where in the context of the pandemic, people working from anywhere, it has brought in a huge amount of use cases around that, and the fact that every application should be available, the concept of VPN, do we need a VPN going forward? So those are some of the things that are getting discussed with clients these days.
Great. Super. So maybe we can go to the next stage where I have some questions on regarding the use cases. So we touched upon it a lot of in different areas, but holistically, I would like to ask for India specifically, what type of use cases you see evolving in the next 5 years to 10 years horizon? From 5G perspective, we have talked about this quite a lot over the years, but now we are getting closer to the 5G network. What do you see are the priority use cases we should have? Anyone wants to take that? Dr. Kochar, if you want to start, maybe.
Yeah, okay. So there are two segments of use cases that I see emerging. One is industry-based, and that is where Industry 4.0 comes in very clearly. Smart cities, Industry 4.0, IoT networks. These are use cases which are emerging. The second use case is going to be in the rural area, and that has become accentuated today because of work from home, work from anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So the type of load that is coming up, the type number of subscribers that are going to come up in rural areas will be best met by 5G. So there we will definitely require lower frequency because the spread requirement will be more and data requirements will not immediately be very high. But we will require low latency and we will require capacities which meet the requirements of rural India.
Correct.
So those are use cases that will include agriculture, that will include telemedicine, that will include
Education.
Learn at home, that education. So these are the use cases which are immediately emerging, and at the application level, I see AI enabling AR, VR for the new education policy which the government has enunciated and which is now being rolled out. Now, this will require labs to be set up, and labs set up in areas where it's not commercially viable to set up a physical lab will go the virtual way, and that can go only on 5G. It may not be possible on 4G at all. So those use cases are going to emerge very clearly. And in this, we will require collaboration and we will require sharing. And therefore, government has also increasingly started looking at it positively. And I can share with you that we have taken up with the government for spectrum sharing interband, which is today not permitted. And we have had a positive response. Possibly this may see the light of day, which will help the telcos quite a lot. The second thing is active, which somebody mentioned that active infrastructure sharing is not permitted. We might see this happening soon.
Hmm.
Government is quite positive on this, and it is only a question of
When?
going. On the challenge side, what I see is network security. We have to look at security definitely in a very different manner. It has to be an organic security rather than being an overlay, which was happening till now. And therefore, the security guys have to be involved right from the beginning, from the prime fourth stage. That's the way I look at it.
Got it. Got it. Anyone wants to jump in?
Yeah, so I can go in, Neil. So one, I agree with broadly with what Dr. Kochar is saying. But the way I look at it, I mean, it's broadly there are two parts to it. One is in the context of India, the broader societal goals, right, that we have. So again, even in the BharatNet plan, we are not able to cover all the gram panchayats or whatever is the government mission. 5G with concepts like LMLC, which is now approved by ITU, can actually cover this last 2 to 3 kilometers where the BharatNet fiber ends, right? And then which can enable government to meet its social agenda, be it universal education, healthcare, etc., without waiting to set up infrastructure, as Dr. Kochar was saying earlier. So very relevant for India, very contextual for India. But the other part is what is the real magic with 5G, right? The innovation. So again, if you recall, around a couple of months back, Eric Schmidt actually came up with a public pronouncement saying, US is way behind China in 5G rollout, and China is 10 times ahead of us, and it's a national emergency, etc. Of course, he was not bothered about what kind of signal was his handset catching, right? He was more concerned about the innovation, AI rollout, that China will take lead in AI if that rollout continued at that pace. Which is where I think 5G can really be helpful in leapfrogging this innovation wave. So we already talked about smart and connected cities. We talked about connected vehicle fleets. Again, governments are using 5G for petrol drones, traffic monitoring, so on and so forth. But even in case of industrial applications, certain unsolved problems today. For example, working in a hazardous environment. Again, 5G robots, AI-powered robots, etc., can solve it immediately. Then it comes to connectivity and technology issues in industrial complexes which are in far-flung areas, right? Fiber cannot reach those areas. Those can be immediately addressed. And finally, again, stuff like complex solutions or orchestration requirements. Again, 5G can build together this entire ecosystem, because right now, every entity or every individual ecosystem player is interested to go in, establish these use cases working on the ground, and create a revenue roadmap. So I think these are some of the use cases. Many of those are not even known to us today. They will evolve as we continue to push the envelopes. But the time is to adopt these technologies, put them to use, and look at what are the currently unsolved problems or problems that are looking, for intervention beyond what is available today.
Randeep, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I think 2-3 points. I think we should see 5G. What does it solve? It solves you a higher speed connectivity at a remote location, which is, you can say, fiber-like speeds, which will allow you a robust connectivity for carrying out a particular session which is remote. In my belief, one thing which we have seen is India lacks, for example, good education in rural areas, and this pandemic has taught us that you can have the best of teachers teach in the languages which is understandable by the rural kids, and the teacher could be teaching from, let's say, Bangalore to the rural Karnataka in Kannada, and that will be a great education than probably what the kind of education that child has in the rural village he or she belongs to. So in my belief, using this to connect rural with a higher reliable connectivity will then enable rural education. I believe we must pick this up, because then we are actually providing a very high quality education to the unconnected today. And we have known now during this COVID that remote education can be very efficient. Many kids have finished full 1 year of the school. They could be secondary, they could be primary, or in between. They have finished one full year learning remotely. And we all have kids. We know that it is not that they have missed on learning very much. They took some time to adapt. So if we really use it, it could be one big use case in uplifting the education standards in India, especially rural India. I want to pick up from where Brajesh said on this rural connectivity, the BharatNet project. BharatNet project, if you were to go and lay rural fiber, it will take ages. And then maintaining that fiber, we already know maintaining that fiber is not easy. The terrains are tough, and maintaining the fiber and equipment at a remote village, which will need a power, and it will be optic connectivity, so dust-free environment, it is very challenging. So why can't we use the precious sub-gigahertz of 700 megahertz which is available, and use that as a ubiquitous rural coverage?
Correct.
And that will then help government not just run these programs like education, but the administrative approach of in telling Government of India schemes of I would say during exigencies you can use these kind of these things. And wireless, we all know, on an overall is more reliable and can reach a larger space, and it is more easier to maintain. Especially it may not give you the same speeds as fiber, but it will still give you more reliable and a resilient coverage. So I think we should use that.
Yeah.
And you talked about using it for in the tough areas, where it is not possible. So I think these remote usages can be also brought in fighting fires, in fighting floods, where it is difficult for human life to go there. So robots can be used, and these are the probably more human and more roots application. But if we talk about the high-end applications, it was talked about AI, machine learning. India has not really produced that much in terms of using artificial intelligence to bring in real intelligent use cases. But the engineers who are doing this in global, I would say 50% of them would be Indians, right?
Right.
So why cannot we use this Indian
Talent.
talent and use these the possibilities of a IoT or a connected world? It could be connected city, connected factory, connected home, connected office, and use this intelligence to really create a value where India is now being seen as a AI/ML powerhouse.
Correct.
Which today is not. So I would say 5G should, if not else, I mean, I'm not saying 5G is a magic wand and everything will happen. 5G could be enabler, because sometimes a new G can be a thought-provoking enabler for to say, we could do this with this. Like we are seeing many of the 5G use cases you could do with 4G also. But when 4G was there, nobody was thinking about it. It's only 5G you started thinking that you could do it with 4G also. So I don't think we should wait for 5G. We should really set on this journey of creating a real digital India and a digital powerhouse for the world.
Very good.
I hope we can use that.
Very good thoughts.
I think, just to continue on what Randeep said, clearly, I mean, from an experience perspective, honestly speaking, I think having been in this environment for the last 15 odd months where, it's primarily a screen that we are all talking to, how can we improve the experience on this meeting, right? How can we get, this is going to be the reality going forward, right? There will always be 3 people in a meeting room and perhaps 2 people always joining over a video call or something like that. How can we make those 2 people as inclusive in the meeting as the other 3 people sitting in the meeting room are, right? So I think those are the type of experiences, those are the type of immersive realities is what this can make a huge difference in. And that's what we should sort of look at from and primarily it's about uplifting and including everyone, right? There's a larger picture what Randeep sort of painted. Second, I think entirely from an B2B standpoint, right? That is where we see a lot more use cases. And clearly it's about innovation which needs to drive, which is what Brajesh also talked about. We need to get that innovation going and not wait for the 5G spectrum and everything else to be ready before we start that. We need to start thinking about that. Clearly, there is a lot of work that is underway. And I'm sure as we sort of progress, we will see more and definitely there's going to be a lot more use cases as we go along the journey.
Jagbirji, do you want to add your thoughts?
I think almost everyone has covered everything. But
What are priorities for you?
yeah, from my side, I would say that, like the way we said, like 2G means it was a mobile voice. 3G means it was a first time data connectivity and mobility. 4G came broadband mobile.
Applications.
5G will be for what? So 5G, I think, is digital society to me. Okay, so it is not because there's no killer app. There's no distinct app today which says that if I deploy, I will have the return on investment today. But there could be potentially multiple apps or the services across B2B or B2C which need to be developed. And I think the one of the important point also will be in 5G, it may not be only solely driven by the mobile operator. It could be driven by the overall ecosystem of partners. So partners have to come together. Somebody must be like, it's not only device and, it's not only a device game.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to have a device, but I think you need to have the use case which will come from the partners.
Correct.
So to monetize 5G, to ensure that there's really the killer app or the app which is important for a given segment is there, we need to believe in partnership and come together to try to actually develop those use cases. So I think otherwise in general, everybody has said in B2B, B2C, okay. But today, even if I want to do the IoT, very expensive.
Correct.
Right from the sensors, to the devices, to the connectivity, to the platform and providing the seamless connectivity where you need the IoT, not that easy. But we have to make it work by having the whole ecosystem come in, working together to find a cost-effective solution. Same thing, maybe fixed wireless, Randeep said, like fixed wireless, even for not only rural, even for urban, reaching fiber, getting fiber inside the homes is very, expensive, time consuming. And maybe it can complement the fiber and the copper, whatever we have in the ground in country, actually by having the broadband fixed wireless connectivity, which will inside also will enable the Wi-Fi, enable the, 5G services. So I think that could be the good application, but at the same time, is there a business case for that? Only for that may not be. Other than that, everyone is sad, other than the industrial IoT, you can have AR, VR, gaming, everything. But I think, as I said, it's important that industry come together, we make partnership, we try to generate the killer app, whether it's coming from the automation of the industries, it's coming from the health sector, it's coming from the maybe manufacturing side. There could be a good automation and the IoT based solution could be a good smart city, smart factory, smart offices. So there are many things, but it needs time, it needs effort, it needs partnership.
Correct. I think we have a few minutes left, 2 or 3 minutes. So I would like to thank everyone for this. I'll give back 5 minutes of your time today. So we had a very good discussion, and I think we covered a lot of ground here in terms of right from what is required, where we could go, and where we are right now. So I thank everyone on this panel for all your insightful thoughts, and hopefully when we get together next year, we see more progress and in subsequent years as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. I would like to thank Jagbir sir, Randeep sir, and Mr. Chawla, Anand sir, Mr. Kochar for making this event. And I would now, we will have this 5-minute break. So I would request all the panelists to leave the stage so the other speaker can join this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
And